So welcome to the Meet the Team event today. We just wanted to have this to chat a bit about what we all do with Respect All Love and why we're here, a bit about identity and how that plays into our activism, as well as just what we do with the rest of our lives, other than being queer and loud. So I just want to give a heads up. We are live streaming on Facebook and recording this so we can put it on YouTube later. We spotlighted all of the speakers' videos so that those attending will not be shown on the stream. So if you have questions later on, you're welcome to, or at any point really, put them in the chat or unmute, camera on or off. All of that is up to you. And we'll also be checking the Facebook live stream for any questions as we go. So with that, we can dive into things. I'm Rowan. My pronouns are he, ze, and they. I'm the founder and president of Respect All Love. I started it about 3 years ago and have since been able to find these lovely people to join me and work on building this into something bigger that can help a lot of people. So that's me. I don't know if I should popcorn it to somebody. Everyone's feeling bold.
I'll go ahead. Yeah, I'm Robin. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. I'm here because of Rowan. I went to an event and got excited and became close with Rowan. So I've been helping out with events. I do a lot of the tech side of things and a little bit of tech support and making sure I'm organizing stuff. And I know we're all sharing more later, but that's me in a nutshell here. I'm a musician and composer. I play trumpet, and hi, it's good to see you all.
I guess I'll go next. Caden, my pronouns are they, he, and I got involved with Respect All Love tangentially through the transgender district as at the beginning of self-isolation, they started hosting non-binary chats, and it was through there that I got involved with Respect All Love, as I have enjoyed learning more of the history that predates Stonewall on the other side of the country.
And I guess I can go next. I'm Molly and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I got involved with Respect All Love through a support group, and now I manage the creative arts side of things, including curating resources, finding people for our creative arts events and helping with that, our official Spotify, and occasionally tech support. Thank you all so much.
Awesome. So we can probably dive into some of the identity stuff. Again, any questions or topics that everyone wants to cover, we're just kind of bounce around probably. But what I love about this group is we all have very different perspectives, from different hobbies to different identities, different states and other backgrounds. So for me personally, I'm bi/pan/whatever you want to call me. I'm on the A spectrum and I identify as transgender non-binary. I started this when about a year after I came out as bi, and I actually wanted to do something like this because I kept getting turned away from other nonprofits because I was too young to volunteer, and I was always a year or two behind their age limit wherever I went. That went on for about 2-3 years until I was like, that's it, I'm going to do my own thing. And I am queer and I want to make a difference, so I'm going to focus on that. And so that's kind of where I started with doing something on social media, since that was accessible to me, and then growing from there. And then it was, once everything was kind of already started with Respect All Love for maybe about a year, a bit less, that I started questioning gender and figuring out that whole journey, which is really interesting to be like loud and proud about queer stuff and then start questioning your whole identity. It's difficult to kind of navigate how much to share or not, or like some of the messages I would be sharing, thinking I was coming at it from like a cis female perspective, to be like, that's not the case. Just had me really rethink things, but I'm really proud of my non-binary identity now, and I think it's given me a lot more to say and give back to the world having this identity. It brings me into a lot more spaces and interesting conversations and perspective on gender and society and a lot of these like boxes and roles that we've built. So I could keep going, but I want to give someone else the chance to jump in.
Sure, yeah, so I identify as bi and non-binary. I could get more specific into labels and details and stuff, but for me, those are the two prominent ones that I share with people and identify with. And as I mentioned before, I kind of like joined up with the team through an event. It was mostly just a meeting, and I was recommended there because I was trying to figure out gender stuff. And you know, I met a few more non-binary folks at the meeting, and it was nice to figure out, you know, who I was and how I identified as. I came out as bi about 6 years ago. It wasn't anything like eventful. It was mostly just like I was like, okay, this is who I am. And you know, it was about 2 years ago that I went to the meeting, and as I was like figuring out like, okay, like what am I really, like who am I really, you know, and kind of figuring out my identity that way. But you know, working with the RAL team has kind of helped me to be like, to feel more confident in my identity and who I am and how I relate to the world around me. So it's been a great experience.
We each have our own unique experiences with our gender identity and sexuality. There are also a lot of similarities here that I'm noticing. I myself also consider myself pan and on the ace and arrow spectrum, which I only started to learn more about as I was delving into gender identity. And I love how even that isn't binary when we think of that, because there's like 4 different types of interactions and the other 2 are often neglected. And yes, pass to Molly, and I'm obviously not binary. Yeah.
I identify as bisexual and queer. I came out with those identities a little over a year ago, and that's definitely been a thing for me, but it helped me get into activism, so I'm very grateful for that. I also identify as a woman, and I'm proud to call myself an intersectional feminist. And for those who aren't familiar with that term, that means someone who cares about women's rights, but also cares about all other kinds of human rights, including anti-racism, queer and trans rights, body positivity, and mental health awareness.
And for those wondering what the reverse of intersectional feminism may be, a local Manon on Instagram made a post about the harms of white feminism.
Yeah, and there's also a problem with feminism that isn't the most gender inclusive. Intersectional feminism seeks to include anyone who might identify as a woman or a feminine person in that.
Yeah, that is a good term for me to know, because you always see feminism and everybody like debating and trying to show how inclusive they are or not, and then they use the wrong words. So just knowing that like phrase is a good one. And a lot of the language is like always changing, and I think that's something with activism that I've learned a lot in a short amount of time. And sometimes I forget that the other people around me haven't done that research. And so I'll be using terms or like changing my language consciously. And then I remember how much I have to do the educating now, that, you know, I take pieces from Instagram and all over the internet and my team, and then go out to like school or work or wherever, and then have to be the like educating person in the room for everybody in that space, which is not our given role as LGBTQ plus people, but it's something that I am okay with taking on. And that's also something I kind of want to acknowledge with all of us, that like we're making a choice, and it's not like you can't expect the LGBTQ plus person in the room to always do the educating, but we're here holding that space in order to do so. Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to like explain non-binary or any other terms that we've used in case folks watching don't know what that means.
If I could explain my understanding of it, in that non-binary can be an umbrella term underneath the trans umbrella, but there are non-binary people who identify as non-binary but not as trans. Although with that umbrella idea, there are multiple identities that fall under non-binary. So that's like where you can get like more into the details of it. But there are a lot of identities that are underneath the non-binary umbrella, but it can also be a sole identity in its own.
And it's mostly just not identifying with the binary of male female in society, and then it's mostly just being like outside of that, and that's why there are so many like sublabels and terms that people use that are more specific, that kind of clarify how they relate to gender a bit more than just simply non-binary. And it's something that's different for everyone and how people experience their own gender. And it's, if people have labels, great, that are more specific, great. If you don't, that's also okay. Like that's one of those things that I struggled with for a bit. Was I wanted to find something that was specific, because I just don't, I identify with gender in my own personal way, and it took me a while. I did find a specific label eventually, but it took me, I first had to kind of understand that it didn't always need a more specific label, that I was okay with just being non-binary. But that's it's something that's important for people to understand, for both for people around you, and if you yourself are trying to figure out gender.
Awesome. And I also wanted to kind of briefly mention we talked about like ace spectrums and arrow spectrums. So just a quick thing, if you don't know what that means, ace is short for asexual, arrow is short for aromantic. So the asexual spectrum is for those who feel little to no sexual attraction. That doesn't necessarily say anything about what they do or don't do, or their relationship, if they have a relationship or don't, if they want one or don't, any of those things. It's just not feeling the attraction or feeling very little. There's a lot of sub-labels under that as well you can look into. That's not what this event is, but I wanted to put it out there. And similarly, the aromantic spectrum is little to no romantic attraction. Is there anything I missed on that for like a quick definition?
Pretty spot on, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I feel like we can kind of move on to other things. We can always, again, bounce around, but I want to talk a bit about kind of the other things that we do, and not just the identity stuff, but a little more about who we are as humans, I guess. If we're all humans, I mean, I don't know. I identify as an alien sometimes, so. But anyways, I'm a singer-songwriter personally. That's a lot of how I connect with the world and other people. It's a lot of how I express myself, and sometimes it's connected to identity. I have a lot of songs about being trans or being ace even. I managed to write a song about that once. That was interesting. But I with Respect to Love, I wanted to focus on the arts because that's where I kind of come from, is always being backstage or on stage or traveling in the car while my sister was doing the same thing. And so with music and dance, it's kind of an easier way when there's no words, and it's like bigger, the emotions are like bigger than the words, bigger than the conversation you can have. And it's a way to like be closer with myself, and also bring it like closer out to other people, if that makes sense. As far as other things, I also do some of the like videos for social media and other public speaking, and also any kind of fashion. As you can tell, I have like flair. So I try to take any opportunity for that. But that's pretty much it for me. I'm just a creative and a bit of a business nerd sometimes, and that's about it.
As for myself, while I studied conservation biology in college, I did also dabble in dance as well, more specifically on an aerial hoop, and other apparatuses. And I really enjoyed having doing different costumes with it to sort of express my gender, as well as changing the color of my hair, which I had fun with. And that's fashion as well. It's definitely been something that I've been getting into more, particularly as I got far along in my medical transition. I felt more comfortable with more feminine items, as an extension of what I was wearing. And yeah, I've really gotten back into some of the more stigmatized things because there's no way to look non-binary, and often there is a predominant narrative of what people expect non-binary to look like. I definitely like to push back against that.
That's super cool, and it's something I'm still trying to figure out is how I want to express myself with just physical existence. And I know sometimes that's harder for people to figure out on some days than others. But it's something that I'm still trying to just figure out who I am and how I relate to the world. I mentioned before that I'm a musician. I'm a composer and a trumpet player, and I relate to music in a similar way that Rowan does, in that it's much easier to express things when you don't have to use words. Um, when there's more emotion than words can do alone. Um, and there's something really nice about being able to just be you in music, because the nice thing about music and a lot of creative stuff is as long as you're you, you can create good work, you can make good work, and people typically it's generally speaking, it's not necessarily true for everyone, but generally speaking, as long as you're you, people generally aren't going to judge who you are, or make strict people can be judgy, and I don't like that. But with music, as long as you're yourself, and as long as you're being genuine and making music, and making your art and sharing your art with the world, people just generally accept you for you. And that's one of the things I've loved about music and working on it, especially as I figure out more of who I am, is that I can just be me, and I don't have to force myself into a specific box for anything. I just can be musical, and that's one of the things I really like about existing as a queer musician.
For me, music and creative writing are my favorite ways of expressing my LGBTQ identity, as well as, other stuff. I mean, there's more to me than being gay. I mean, I'm also a single issue voter when it comes to LGBTQ rights, so I am also my political views. Okay, I guess there's only one thing. Just kidding. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, my music and my writing really helped me express my views on LGBTQ rights and on queer love. So I write a lot of songs about my bisexual identity and about how that's been a part of my life. And a lot of novels I write have queer characters that defy stereotype, so that really helps me try and create the queer representation I wish I had had when I was first coming out. And to Robin's point, I definitely agree that coming out and expressing LGBTQ identity can really help make creations more authentic. Before I came out, it was like my music and writing was also in the closet. I was scared to write about queer themes, so I spent most of my creative energy trying to sound like I wasn't LGBTQ instead of doing a decent job with whatever I was doing. So I've definitely improved since I came out.
I relate to that so much. I've been writing since I was a kid, and I was always trying to like write something without really saying it, but like I would know, and it did not work out well. It was very bad writing. And I think also when I came out, it was like, at some point, I just need to face this and just be very honest and very straightforward. And it's improved a lot in the last few years just from that and being like, screw it. I'm queer, I'm trans. You're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, when I would write songs about girls as a young kid, I would be like, oh, I just admire this girl. And I would cut all the parts about feeling about said girl any more than admiring someone. And looking back, those songs were definitely my early way of expressing LGBTQ identity. I was just terrified to do that. And like my family, of course, was amazingly supportive, but there just wasn't LGBTQ representation, so I didn't feel like that was a thing I could do as a songwriter or a person.
And you talk about like the writing being more authentic when you're out, and like the thing that immediately comes to mind when you said that was, at least for me, was like listening to like Queen's music. And is like it just Freddie Mercury is just like the lyrics that are chosen are like, okay, yeah, this is definitely like it, and it's well done, and it's it's written in a way that's like, okay, yes, this is definitely queer. um but but a lot of people don't always realize that or acknowledge it. Like it's very obvious if you listen to it, recognize it, like realize what it's talking about. But like oftentimes people don't, or like ignore that like side of it. So it's really interesting. That's one of the things that I was like, that I was thinking about. It's just like so well written that it's like on both sides of it. Like you can definitely hear it. And I mean, obviously, more people know, more people are writing, more people are doing that. But it's one of those things where I was like listening to it when I was like younger, like before I was started like figuring out identity stuff, versus listening to it now. I'm like, yeah, I can see that, you know, you can see the songwriting in it. You can see like it's really well crafted for for songs that like just for what it is. It's very well crafted to balance both sides of it. It was just something fun that came to mind.
Yeah, that's cool. And just with art in general, you can like do so much more. Like it's literally about pushing the boundaries and trying to innovate and be very vulnerable and straightforward, and just sharing all of those stories. So sometimes you can get away with a lot more because they're like, oh, it's, you know, it's theater. He's dressed up like a woman. And it's like, no, this is the story of a trans woman. Like, you know, but I don't know. Sometimes it passes by people still, and sometimes it's a way to like be even more honest on stage than like if you can't be elsewhere, especially.
Yeah, and like with writing, it's easy to write LGBTQ characters and have someone say that it's just like putting in representation, checking the boxes, when really it's an expression of identity. And anyway, when we do the representation, it's a lot more than checking the boxes, but sometimes something that just is a search for representation can really be a way to explore identity.
And one of the nice things about what we do is we can change that. So it's not just checking the boxes anymore, it's just natural, And like that's one of the things that, I think we're all striving to do here, is just making it so that it's not necessarily different or wrong or like checking off boxes for representation. It's just human. I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do here, both inside and outside of RAL, and just be ourselves and be human, and like normalize everything, normalize just our queerness, and like it's okay, it's great, it's awesome, and it's human, like it's real.
I don't know if anyone else wants to share stories on this or not, but I kind of wanted to also acknowledge different part of the story, at least that I've dealt with, because I feel like a lot of the reactions I get when people find out about what I do with Respect All Love or otherwise activism, they're like, "Oh, you're so brave." I think we all know that phrase, but they're like, "Oh, I could never do that," or a lot of those misunderstanding phrases, and sometimes they don't come across very well, the ones I mentioned.
Right, like that, like the, I can never do that. Why not?
Yeah.
Right? Like just like we're human. Just like speak out. Like it's just, you need someone to say something. So why can't you? It's just saying like, hey, these people deserve rights. Like that's a simple sentence for you to say, and it's as easy as saying that and showing your support. It's not even necessarily, it doesn't need to be this grand gesture. It's just as easy as like showing your support in that case. So that's that whole, I can never do that. It's just, the answer is just, why not? Like every single time, for me, at least in my head, I don't always say it out loud, but at least in my head, the answer is always like, why not? Like, like it's one of those things that it's not as difficult to show your support as as it is really anything. There's a lot of stuff, like it's very simple to basically, just even if it takes some time for you to figure out, like even if it's not, and even if your brain is wired in a way where like this kind of stuff isn't necessarily, like, it doesn't make sense to you initially, as long as you're taking the time to make it make sense in your head, it's the same thing as like just telling yourself anything else any other day, like, oh, I have to do the dishes, oh, but it's small stuff, and it's just small reminders that yes, this is human. Sorry, that was a little bit of I took a little away from your point here, but I just wanted to like, just why not,
Yeah, I'm glad you did. That was quite well said. But yeah, a lot of people can just not show up in that way or take it negatively or like pick on you for standing up. And it's like, come on. Like I've dealt with some things even when I like first came out as trans in my community college classroom. It wasn't even school, it was like one class / club. And there was this one woman in there that was religious and emailed me scripture. I don't know how she got my email actually, but suddenly there's scripture in my email and her telling me I needed to make different choices. And I ended up going to my professor and didn't like take action or anything. Like she didn't mean any harm. She had different views and had been through some things with her own identity, but that was also when I told my professor, hey, can you say them pronouns for me? Also, this happened. But I don't know, there is still that stuff, and it's not like that we can just stand up here and everything's okay. And there's not like there's still the scary parts. There's still the mean people and the ones that don't understand and the ones that could, I don't know how to phrase it, but I just want to show it as, here we are loud and proud and like everything is great. Like it is great. And I love this. I love what I do and it's always worth it. But, we have to do this for a reason. So I just want to make sure we're not like losing sight of that reason and reality, I guess.
And especially in today's online spaces, what with COVID-19, and usually people are supportive, but there can be some homophobic stuff. One time I came out on a public Discord server with some people from an academic group I was part of, and like 20 of them used a channel I had posted on about LGBTQ rights to say they hated me and then tried to kick me off. And like there were a lot of gay jokes too, because yeah, gay jokes are sensitive. But and like one time I had to leave a class because the teacher told me I couldn't be gay on a public chat, which didn't make sense. How can I not be gay? What? But I did not want to do that, so I ended up leaving. And like it came out because the head of another nonprofit, the polar opposite of this nonprofit, said the derogatory phrase "no homo" on a group chat. So like there can be incidents like this, even when the vast majority of people, including friends and family, can be really supportive.
And one of the things that's like there are really terrible people about this kind of stuff, and it sucks. But it's one of the things that we want to do, and at least for me, I want to try to make sure I put out into. I'm very shy about correcting people about my pronouns. I'm really bad about it. But it's one of the things I'm working on, because even if I can, even if I can say to one person like, hey, that comment you made wasn't cool, or hey, can you use different pronouns for me? Like one person at a time, it's slowly going to spread. And even though there are people that aren't great, and there are more than we'd like there to be, but one person at a time, if we can talk to one person and be like, hey, look, like that wasn't cool, or it slowly starts to spread. And I think that's the biggest thing about stuff like this is, even though there's only a few of us here today, there's still a few of us here today, and we can share it, and we can share it with other people. And it's it's a similar concept to like just how everything just spreads all over the internet, and just generally is like, you affect one person, you help one person see the world slightly differently, or you help one person like understand something they didn't before, and they're gonna spread that. They're by just being themselves, they're gonna naturally share that. So I think that's it's one of the things we strive for, and it's one of the things that's like super important, that maybe it's not all going to change at once, but as long as we keep talking to one person, two people, even if it's one person a month that you talk to, that's a dozen people that year that you've helped understand the world a little differently. And that's the cool thing about being human, is sometimes it just takes that many people, and it spreads naturally, because once you are something, once you incorporate something into yourself, it's just going to spread to other people. Like if you get people that are very vigilant on supporting your identity, using your correct pronouns, they're going to use your correct pronouns, and other people around you are going to notice, take the lead, I think it's just important to realize that, and just, it may not be all at once, but it will happen, one person at a time, even if it has to be.
Yeah, and educating people is so important. I also would say that the best allies do ask questions and take the lead in being educated. One of my closest friends, after I came out, asked me a lot of questions about how an LGBTQ support group worked and what all the different pride flags were. I know it's kind of a cliched question, but I was still really grateful that she asked. And ever since, I've been trying to, when allies say they want to be educated, really help with that. Of course, sometimes trolling happens. There are a lot of people at my online school who think it's hysterical to ask me what homosexuality is over and over again. They're not very nice. But the vast majority of people who ask for help learning about LGBTQ identity genuinely do want to learn. And the more we can educate people through events like this, or even just through interactions, the more we can help advance LGBTQ rights.
And those people are the most valuable, the ones that reach out and just have genuine questions. And even if it's like, even if they just don't know, like even if it's simple stuff and they just don't know, they're asking the questions, and that's always cool to see. I have a professor that is working really, really hard on getting pronouns right and using everyone or you all instead of you guys, and it's really sweet. And he has a really tough time with it, but he's trying, and that's one of the things that's like, it means a lot. It's like, it's one of those small things, like, yeah, it's will it be a while before he gets it fully and casually and comfortably? Probably, but he's still trying, and that's part of it, is just like, just get people to ask or tell people, or again, it's that one person at a time thing I've been sharing. But it's so important that people ask questions, or you get them to ask questions, or you answer the questions before they ask them, but just being able to share that and being able to help people understand.
It looks like we have a question in the chat. So, Dan, Heham, and Ingrid Sheeher are asking, if you could sum up the overarching goal of RIL, what would it be? And what do you think the broader implications are of advocating and for and supporting LGBTQ PIA2S plus creators and artists, i.e., what can the world or individuals learn from what you are doing? Who would like to take that one?
I think, as far as the first question goes, I think we all have our individual contributions toward this, but I think Rowan's best equipped to answer that first question. We can all talk a little bit about the second one, but I do want Rowan to share his thoughts on this, because it's an important question.
Yeah, definitely. The short version is creating more diverse media representation, both in artistic projects and online content, since that is everywhere and everything, as well as supporting LGBTQ plus individuals and artists, as was mentioned in the other question, and breaking down societal standards. Basically, to explain what that means a little bit more, it sounds a little broad, but the societal standards just meaning it's intersectional. It's not just LGBTQ plus rights, but we also want to cover body positivity, anti-racism, feminism, all of those other things, and just break down like all of these ideas that society has taught us, that our culture has, that different cultures have, that are harmful, and just kind of take them head on and say, we're human first, and a lot of these things don't even matter, or they're harmful standards. So basically educating people on those things and creating more inclusion representation, which both really tend to give back the support we're looking for. Yeah, that's the goal as far as the mission. I'm not sure if you're looking for like events and more like the action part, I'm happy to explain that as well if needed.
And I want to bring up a point relating to the second question, is that we are putting together a bunch of playlists of all sorts of different kinds of like inclusive playlists. And I can share them in the chat right now. They're all on our Spotify that we're working on, but we're just making sure people are aware, and even if it's making those playlists to help the inclusion and just kind of boost LGBTQ plus artists, it is part of that. And like part of it's boosting these artists and boosting, like making sure people see them and just awareness. But part of it also is that it's everything. And like Rowan talked to this, Rowan talked about this a little bit, but it's about everything. It's about making sure that even if you feel you're super inclusive and you're part of one group, you can show your support by being more aware of other groups and other people. And I think that's important, because I think there's a lot of cases in which minorities or such are like split into different groups, and are in some cases like there's conflict between the two groups, and there really shouldn't be. It's mostly just like other people trying to create that conflict. And the biggest thing, I think, that both for the playlist and all the other stuff we're doing, and all the events we're doing and bringing people in to talk about, is all the stuff we're bringing people in to talk about. The biggest thing is like, we're not alone, we're not separate, we're all human, we're all in this together. And a lot of people in different groups are struggling with the same things, and that's something that's really important for allies and people in the groups to understand, is that we're all going through similar things, even if it's not always the same, but there's a lot of similarities. And there isn't really, it doesn't help when we're pitted against each other, when there is conflict. But by bringing the groups together and by spreading awareness and all of that, it helps us move forward as humans, even if there are small differences in identity and who we are. We're all still human.
Though that being said, assimilation isn't the goal. Like, the goal is not for us all to pretend we're not LGBTQ, because
Right.
obviously that wouldn't work. But I think unapologetically expressing our queerness advances all minority groups, because both for those of us who are part of other minorities and those who aren't, it really opens up the space for all sorts of people, whether that's LGBTQ folks, women, folks of color, folks with different body sizes, or whatever other minorities we're advocating for.
It gives us, I guess, you make a good point. It's not about assimilation, but it's about like all being together with our actions. It's not, we don't need to be fighting for this separately. We can fight for women and LGBTQ plus rights in the same vein, in the same actions we take. So I think that's it's about the inclusion of the groups and the like working together versus the assimilation part of it. But yeah, you make a good point. Thank you for forcing me to clarify there. I appreciate that.
Oh, it's totally fine. Yeah. Of course, I totally agree with the we're all human thing, though. I just wanted to make that clear.
Question about the impact of supporting creators reminds me of the Rainbow Capitalism that comes out during the month of June. And I know some creators, their art or the products that they produce often contribute to them meeting their material needs, whereas we know these larger corporations that don rainbows for profit don't necessarily need that extra cash, and whatever percentage they may set aside to donate. In reality, it's much better to send that direct support to those who need it.
I've definitely been seeing a lot of that, and I'm still seeing posts recently about like, remember when these companies posted rainbows? Here's what they're actually doing now that that's over. That's something to look into. I also wanted to share a little bit more on this question about like, what can the world or individuals learn from what we're doing in regards to advocating and supporting. And I think for the LGBTQ plus people that see it, they get to see that this is possible. For all the creators that are doing things, for all the people that are speaking out and still okay having done that, it just shows that it's possible to all the younger people or for the people in different parts of their journeys that need to see that representation. And because we're also talking about not just the end or like, whoa, found my identity, but like I have like being in the middle of transition myself, and a lot of the process, just that like it's all normal, it's all part of it, it's all okay. And as for the other people that aren't LGBTQ plus, that maybe are allies or maybe aren't allies but are trying to, maybe we've got their attention at least. We're showing that it's not just the stereotypes and this poor representation that we get sometimes. We get to show more of that whole human and all the different aspects and like make it more tangible, I guess, to see and accept.
And more genuine, because even though there is some representation, a lot of it isn't genuine. It's it's written from not that direct perspective, like it's written from the perspective or by generally someone who hasn't had the same experience with it, but by putting out the content and just the art and the music and everything of people that have been through this, that have like this direct perspective on life, it feels more genuine. There's a lot of I know there's a lot of songs we've shared and we've talked to artists about just putting out content that's just very like genuine in that experience, and it's very them and their experience with the world, and it's even if it's like even if it's music or whatever it is, it's always genuine, it's always themselves. And we shared a lot of that at our artist showcase event recently, and that was one of the cool things to see, was just the diversity and the ability to just the ability for these artists to just be themselves, and even if it was for something small or but whatever it was, like whatever art they were sharing, it was genuine and it was pure and it was from experience. And I that's really big. That's important to have for both people in the community and people outside it that need to understand that it's not quite what it's been shown as,
And there's also the community aspect of trying to think of the wording I want to use, but you mentioned people like inside and outside of the community. We're kind of like trying to build those bridges, so it's the gatekeeping or being like, oh, you're an ally, like you're not welcome in this conversation. Like we try to avoid that, so that if people need the space to talk about something, they need that like safe space, like that's totally valid. But also like bringing people in, which kind of relates to, actually this is not where I was going to go with this, but with coming out day, there's a lot of conversation about like bringing people in rather than thinking of it as coming out. And so that's kind of a cool way to go to it too. But I don't know, showing that it's possible and being out and having these conversations allows us to connect with each other, which makes things a lot easier to get through sometimes. But it also builds conversations with the other allies. And then it's like, it's not this other thing of like, oh, we have to talk about this now. It's just a conversation. It's just life. And whether they are part of the community or not, which even that like language feels a little weird to me.
Yeah, that's fair. And you know, one of the things that we've done with our events is, you know, like and for all of our allies here, we appreciate you, and we want you to know that. But part of what it is it's just your questions, even if it's just about specific, you know, terminology or you know, something, just anything, but your questions are still just as valid here. And that's part of it, is like, just because you are an ally, it doesn't mean you're not welcome. It doesn't mean your questions aren't valid. It doesn't mean that we're not going to answer your questions or even, you know, help you figure out the correct wording on some questions if there's not necessarily, if like something in the way you ask your question is, you know, not as inclusive, we'll help you, you know, we'll help you kind of understand that, and you know, we're going to work it through with you. And I think I do love the idea of like bringing people in. I think it's a really good way to go about it, because it's just because you're sharing yourself, and there's something when it's genuine, when you are sharing yourself, you're allowing people in. And this applies to like everything. If you're sharing personal details with someone, you're allowing them into your life. And it's making sure. I just love that wording of it, because you're allowing people, you're bringing people into your life, you're allowing them into your life, instead of you needing to exit your little bubble to exist in their world.
Yeah.
Which is, I just like it. It's a really good way to put it.
Speaking of questions and allyship, we've got a question in chat. Margot Sheher has asked if Respect Out Love has a mission statement that combines all these important aspects of our organization. And she also says, thank you for your important work. I'm particularly impressed with how everyone finds discovery and expression through the arts. Thank you so much for that. And as far as the mission statement goes, who would like to field that one?
Can take that one. I'm gonna put it in the chat as well as read it. So everyone kind of has it, but I'm glad you asked. And I'm also really glad that you're here. So thank you. As far as our mission statement, so Respect All Love is a human rights organization that advocates for LGBTQ plus people, diverse media representation, and breaking down societal standards. Through interactive events, shows, and online content, RAL offers a platform for a wide range of voices to be heard and acknowledged. As a short little mission statement, hopefully that kind of bundles it all together for you. And we're about to be finishing up here, so any last questions, please put them in the chat or go ahead and unmute if you'd like to ask that way as well.
And if you have further questions for us post-event, there is a contact form on our webpage. We love answering emails, and if you know any of us personally, we can also answer texts or awkward questions in any form. And of course, we'll have some other events at which we're happy to help educate people about LGBTQ identity.
Yeah, in fact, our next one, the Eventbrite isn't up just yet, but it'll be available in about a week, actually, so not too far off. But we are collaborating with the LA Mission College LGBTQ plus club to do a transgender awareness webinar. And so it'll focus on all of the basics you need to know about transgender identity and transition life. All your questions will be answered, hopefully. And if not, we're gonna have bring back our gender terminology at the top of the year, like we had at the beginning of this year. But as far as this next one, it'll be a very basic rundown transgender awareness. So that'll be on November 18th at 4:30 PST, 7:30 EST. Depending on what time zone you're in, just want to make sure that's out there because there's sometimes confusion with virtual events. But that'll be up in the next week. So if you want to go to the event page that you used to sign up for this event, you can select Respect All Love under the event name and follow us there, and then you'll get updates, or you can follow us on Instagram, and either way will be covered.
Yeah, I'm also sharing a few more links for you all. I did share a bunch of links at the beginning with websites and like how you can reach us, as well as all of our our resources and our documents. But I do want to share again some of that, and also some of our other links today. We have we'll have a YouTube playlist up with our event recording, so you'll be able to access this one in the future if you'd like to go back on any of the information we shared, or just show your support through YouTube. We have our link tree, which has all of our links, and it'll also have access to the upcoming event as soon as that Eventbrite is ready. And we also have an event feedback form for you that we've put together, and it's if you have the time to fill it out and you'd like to share your thoughts about this event or future events, but we'll always be checking that, looking at it. We'll check it in a couple days after this event to give you time to put in your thoughts and kind of share what you thought of the event, and if there was anything we could do to improve the event, or if there's anything you're looking for in future events. But that form will be there for you. I'm putting these in chat now, as well as the links I posted earlier. And I just want to make sure you all have those, just so you know where to find us, you know where to reach us. We'll be setting up a little more as far as of our links as far as that goes in the future. We do have some stuff we're working on to kind of help any last minute tech support be answered a little quicker. And this is I guess just for the future. I'm not always present or on screen during events, but I am for this one as meet the team kind of thing. But I'm very often just running tech support, so there's not always camera on, but it's good to see you all and good to say hi. For those of you that I have met but haven't met in events.
Yes, and thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you again, everyone, and have a good rest of your weekend, and hope to hear from you either in feedback or by email, or see you at the next event.